Imagine stepping off, like a really long-haul flight, into a completely unfamiliar ancient city. You're hauling your luggage, your eyes are burning from lack of sleep, and your brain is just pleading for, 1 hour in a quiet hotel room.
Right, the conventional wisdom is to just go rest.
Exactly. The soft, comfortable advice we all give each other is to go acclimate. Take it easy. But what if the person standing next to you said, "No, drop your bags right now. We are going to walk these streets until your feet physically blister."
Because if you aren't physically exhausted, you aren't actually alive.
Yeah, welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled to have you with us as we tear up the cozy modern blueprints for life and look at something, well, unapologetically demanding.
It's a radical departure from the comfort-driven culture we're so used to today. We're digging into the life philosophy of Professor Dr. Ilber Ortayli. He is a really prominent Turkish historian and academic and just a true polyglot.
And we're looking specifically at the framework he lays out in his best-selling book, Bir Ömür Nasıl Yaşanır, which translates simply to How to Live a Life.
To give you a sense of what we're working with here, we've pulled together a massive stack of sources for you today.
Oh, yeah. We've got comprehensive academic analyses dissecting his historical frameworks, cultural portal summaries, bookstore descriptions, and my absolute favorite material, the intensely polarized reader reviews from platforms like Goodreads.
Yeah, those are fascinating because let me tell you, people are either fiercely inspired by this man or absolutely furious with him.
The reaction makes perfect sense when you look at the material. Ortayli is offering a rigorous manifesto on building what's called intellectual and experiential capital. This isn't about manifesting good vibes, right?
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
It is a declaration of war on monotony and passive lethargy, a state he refers to as miskinlik.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to construct this immense intellectual fortune he's talking about, you first have to understand the map.
Right, the timeline.
Yeah, Ortayli believes human life is bound by a very rigid chronological timeline. He divides our existence into 4 unyielding seasons. You have the foundation phase from age 12 to 25. Then comes restoration, or like the conquest phase, stretching from 25 to 40. That leads into authority from 40 to 55, and finally, mastery from age 55 onward.
The phase that triggers the most intense debate in our sources is definitely that first one, the foundation phase, from 12 to 25.
That's for sure.
Ortayli views this specific window as the critical juncture of human development. This is the era of maximum memory plasticity and peak physical energy. His directive here is aggressive. You must consume knowledge with a terrifying intensity.
Because what happens during this window essentially builds the permanent scaffolding of your mind, right?
Exactly.
The sources make this really striking point, that whatever you read, whatever films you absorb, or whatever languages you study before age 25, that becomes the permanent substrate of your worldview.
It locks in.
Yeah, and if you try to acquire that same knowledge later, it just sort of slips away. But your early library stays.
I have to admit, as I read this, I felt a wave of anxiety.
You and a lot of other readers. Yeah, looking at the reader reviews, we have a 40-year-old reader who left a panicked comment joking that their learning window had completely slammed shut. I kind of have to push back here. Modern science talks a lot about neuroplasticity continuing well into old age. Is Ortayli really claiming your brain just hardens like dry clay on your 25th birthday?
Well, what's fascinating here is that this is where many readers get caught up. But if we look at the underlying mechanics of his argument, it's less about biological impossibility and more about the compounding interest of time and societal structure.
Meaning what exactly?
Well, he is well aware you can memorize a historical date at age 30, but think about the unique ecosystem of youth. You have a ferocious absorption rate combined with a near-total lack of adult responsibilities.
Right, no mortgage, no demanding career, no dependence.
Exactly. That creates a vacuum for deep study that simply disappears later in life.
So it's about the environmental conditions as much as the biological ones.
Precisely that. Modern society has a tendency to treat the 20s as, an extended childhood, a time to wander, find yourself, and passively sample life.
Which he hates.
Oh, he aggressively rejects that norm. He demands we treat our youth as an intense intellectual boot camp. If you don't pour the heavy concrete of your foundation, then you will spend the rest of your life trying to build a skyscraper on loose sand.
Which perfectly explains the 25 to 40 era, the restoration phase. This is your second chance to patch the holes in that foundation. But the sheer raw absorption rate is gone.
Right, you're shifting toward output.
Yeah, establishing your career and your identity.
Yeah.
But what really caught me off guard in the sources is what happens in the authority phase, from 40 to 55.
Oh, The romance aspect.
Yes, we assume this is all about professional dominance commanding your field, but Ortayli highlights this era as the absolute peak for emotional and romantic depth.
It is a really beautiful nuance in his philosophy. The sources note his belief that profound, mature love is largely impossible in youth because you lack the experiential capital.
You just haven't lived enough.
Right. In your 40s and 50s, you have synthesized your accumulated life experiences, your heartbreaks, your travels, and your intellectual pursuits. You are calmer, and your emotional awareness is sharper.
That synthesis allows for a complexity in relationships that a 20-year-old simply cannot fathom.
Exactly.
So the boot camp of your youth isn't just to make you smart. It's the prerequisite for feeling deeply later in life. That's genuinely fascinating. But let's look at the actual curriculum of this boot camp, because Ortayli is ruthless about what you should be studying.
He really is. He has zero patience for modern educational comforts.
Right, he champions a fiercely classical foundation.
In his view, a truly educated mind rests on a trinity music, mathematics, and philology. These aren't just subjects to him. They are the universal frameworks that allow you to decode the human experience.
I want to pause on philology, actually, because that sounds like a dusty term from a 19th century monastery. We often just conflate it with learning a language, but it's deeper than that, isn't it?
Considerably deeper. Philology is the study of language in written historical sources. It is understanding the historical development of words. When Ortayli says you must study philology, he doesn't mean just learning how to order a coffee in French. He means understanding how the French constructed their legal documents in the 17th century.
Because that syntax reveals the historical DNA of how they think.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. He describes speaking only a single language as being trapped in a cage. If you only speak your native tongue, you are confined to one reality, one way of conceptualizing the universe.
To break out of that cage, he insists you must master at least 2 to 3 foreign languages.
But again, he drops a rigid rule. This linguistic jailbreak needs to happen preferably before age 15.
Yes, and he is highly specific about the methods. He pushes back hard against standard, sanitized grammar textbooks. To truly understand the architecture of a culture, you have to read its foundational texts.
Right, like history books.
Yeah, he suggests reading children's history books in the target language to see how a culture explains its heroes to its own youth.
Wow, that's really clever.
And for Western languages, he explicitly recommends reading the Bible because those narratives form the bedrock of Western literature, art, and philosophy.
But the way he expects you to learn all this is equally controversial. He is a fierce defender of rote memorization.
Yes, he is.
Today, educators treat memorization like a crime against creativity. We prize active learning and open-ended critical thinking. Why is Ortayli demanding we memorize basic patterns?
The rationale here is deeply structural. You cannot creatively apply concepts you haven't internalized. Think of it like pouring the scaffolding for a building. Memorizing grammatical charts, geographical maps, or mathematical formulas, that is the scaffolding. Modern education often asks students to design the penthouse before they've laid the steel beams. Ortayli argues that true creative improvisation, whether in jazz, mathematics, or debate, only happens when the foundational rules are so deeply memorized they become a subconscious reflex.
You can't break the rules until you know them.
Right.
But to build this scaffolding, there is a massive social cost required, and that cost is solitude. In the book, Ortayli takes direct aim at Turkish culture specifically, pointing out the deeply ingrained habit of doing absolutely everything in groups.
Studying together, going to the cinema together, navigating life as a collective.
Yeah, he views that constant socialization as an intellectual crutch. The safety of the group guarantees comfort, and comfort is the enemy of original thought.
Exactly. When you are studying with friends, the friction of wrestling with a difficult text is inevitably diffused by conversation. Solitude forces you to confront the limits of your own mind. It is the crucible where actual creative synthesis happens.
So he does not want you sitting in the campus cafe for 3 hours, nursing a latte and calling it studying.
Far from it. And this leads directly to a vital concept he calls the anti-Cahill, or the anti-ignorant rule. Your social circle is not something that should just happen to you by geographic coincidence. You must ruthlessly curate it.
He explicitly says, don't wait for high-quality, brilliant people to magically find you. You have to hunt them down.
The intention is to introduce intellectual friction into your life. If you surround yourself with people who echo your own worldview, your intellectual muscles atrophy. You must seek out those who challenge your assumptions and force you to defend your positions.
All right, so if you spend your youth in this intense, solitary crucible building your foundation, escaping the language cage, curating your circle, you can't just stay in your library forever.
No, eventually you have to test it.
Exactly. You have to take this meticulously built mind out into the world. And that brings us to the art of brutal travel. Listeners, if your idea of a vacation involves a luxury resort in a swim-up bar, Ortayli would likely tell you to stay home.
For him, travel is not a leisure activity. It is a rigorous organizational feat. It is the ultimate test of your experiential capital, and it is governed by strict protocols, starting with what we might call the no-rest rule.
This is the scenario we open the show with. You arrive in a new city. You do not nap. You do not check out the hotel amenities. You walk. And you keep walking until you are physically exhausted.
The fatigue itself is the proof that you are actually engaging with the environment.
He argues that if you were sitting on a tour bus or checking off a list of highly sanitized tourist traps, you are merely a spectator to human history.
To be a traveler, you must interact with the friction of the city. You need to use a physical map and get lost in its geography. You have to navigate the local markets to witness the raw commerce of everyday life.
He even mandates a brutal reading ratio. The sources mention that for every 20 hours you spend physically touring and exhausting yourself, you are required to spend 2 hours reading intensely about the history of the location you are standing in.
It's a serious commitment.
But I have to ask, why is comfort such an adversary here? Why does a vacation have to feel like a military deployment? Can we absorb culture while sipping tea on a beautiful balcony?
The underlying logic is that experiential wealth, the kind that permanently alters your face and your mind, cannot be acquired passively. Comfort breeds amnesia.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You don't remember the soft bed in a chain hotel, but you remember the blisters you got walking the cobblestones of Florence to find a hidden Renaissance courtyard. The physical toll anchors the intellectual memory.
And he provides a mandatory checklist of where you must go to acquire this wealth. Global cities of antiquity are non-negotiable. Places like Florence, Jerusalem, Samarkand. But I was really struck by the emphasis the sources place on his love for Sarajevo. Why Sarajevo?
Sarajevo serves as the perfect physical manifestation of what he wants you to understand about world history. It is a profound synthesis.
How so?
While when you walk its streets, you are physically moving between a 16th century Ottoman mosque and an Austro-Hungarian cathedral. The aesthetic beauty of the human voice delivering the call to prayer echoes against European architecture. It forces the traveler to confront how civilizations collide, blend, and leave their physical scars and beauties on a single geographic point.
You can't just read about synthesis. You have to feel it on the pavement.
Exactly. And of course, he mandates exploring domestic landmarks within Turkey. He insists you must thoroughly understand your own culture's DNA before you go critiquing it or moving abroad.
Right. You have to stand in Hagia Sophia. You must study the architecture of the Suleimani Mosque and travel east to see the Surpass Church in Van.
Another fascinating protocol he demands is exploring these cities at night. A city like Venice or Barcelona changes its entire aesthetic character after the sun goes down.
Oh, absolutely.
The shadows alter the architecture, the commercial noise fades, and the historic atmosphere rises to the surface. It offers a totally different essential dimension of the city's identity.
So we have this exhausting, demanding approach to travel. And that intensity mirrors his approach to the aesthetics of daily life. This philosophy isn't just about where you fly, it's about how you conduct yourself on a random Tuesday.
Personal discipline is paramount. He champions waking up early to read and write when the mind is at its absolute sharpest. Sluggishness is not tolerated. Furthermore, aesthetics and cleanliness are non-negotiable standards. They are outward manifestations of inward self-respect.
And he gets incredibly granular. Like he mandates wearing high-quality orthopedic shoes, which honestly is just practical advice if you're expected to walk 20 hours a day in Samarkand.
Very true.
But he extends this physical discipline to something entirely different. Dancing. Dancing is mandatory.
It is a wonderful, surprising detail in the text. Ortayli argues that whether you are a villager mastering a traditional folk dance or a city dweller learning the waltz, not knowing how to dance is a fundamental failure to participate in life.
Why is dancing put on the same pedestal as mathematics or history, though?
Because it is the physical expression of cultural rhythm. Just as philology is the syntax of the mind, dance is the syntax of the body. If you cannot move to the music of your culture or the culture you are visiting, you are remaining a passive spectator.
He wants you actively on the floor, engaging with the rhythm.
Precisely.
He also pushes hard for radical personal autonomy. He explicitly states that to live a proper life, you must eventually ignore even your parents' advice regarding your career and private life. You must make your own choices. In marriage, his cardinal rule is to give each other room to breathe. You can love deeply, but you must maintain your intellectual independence.
Which brings us to a critical juncture in our deep dive. When you stack all of these demands together, the languages, the solitary study, the global travel, the rigorous aesthetics, the reaction from readers is frequently explosive.
Oh, the reader backlash in the sources is intense. We're talking furious one-star reviews on Goodreads. People call him out of touch, a boomer dispensing deeply elitist advice.
Right.
One reviewer zeroes in on the language rule, asking, learn 4 languages, 2 dead, 2 alive. Who has the time or the money for that? There is palpable anger over his decree that, quote, if you can't go to a good university, don't go at all. Critics argue he completely ignores the economic realities of millions of young people.
And, the frustration is a completely valid response to the text. The requirements he is laying out, hiring private language tutors before age 15, flying to Jerusalem and Florence, curating an elite social circle. These actions require a level of resource access that a vast majority of the population simply does not possess.
So let's pause and look at this through the lens of you, the listener. You might be working 50 hours a week. You can't just jet off to Sarajevo tomorrow, and you can't afford a private tutor in ancient Greek. Do we discard Ortayli's entire blueprint because the financial barriers are too high? Or is there a core truth hidden inside this tough love?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying mechanism absolutely survives. We can classify Ortayli's worldview as a form of meritocratic elitism.
Meritocratic elitism?
Yeah. The core of his message isn't actually about the plane ticket, it is about the refusal to be passive. He is demanding that everyone be intensely, uncomfortably disciplined with whatever resources they do have.
So how do we apply that? If I can't travel to Florence, how do I travel brutally in my own hometown?
By applying the same rigorous mindset. You don't need a flight to get lost in an unfamiliar neighborhood of your own city. You don't need wealth to walk into a local library, pull out a physical map, and read about the historical architecture you walk past every day, but never actually see.
Wow, yeah.
The enemy isn't poverty. The enemy is lethargy. Gravity constantly pulls us toward the comfortable, the easy, the algorithmically suggested. Escaping that gravity requires extreme effort.
It's about refusing to accept mediocrity as your default setting. You cannot build a masterpiece of a life using lazy work ethics, regardless of your tax bracket. The frustration those Goodreads reviewers are feeling, well, maybe that's actually the friction of being asked to expect more of themselves.
That friction is deliberate. Ortayli is challenging you to look at your life not as a series of random accidents or societal defaults, but as a deliberate, intentional construction project.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway. Whether you agree with Ortayli's rigid, unyielding rules, or whether you side with his frustrated critics who argue his timelines are outdated, the overarching mission of this deep dive remains clear. You are the architect of your own intellectual fortune. You have to step out of the soft, cozy blueprint. You must aggressively curate what you consume, seek out the difficult, solitary paths, and intentionally design your mind.
Because the comfort zone, while pleasant, is completely sterile. Nothing of lasting value grows without friction. His philosophy is a demanding call to active, relentless growth.
And as we close out today, I want to leave you with a striking, visceral metaphor directly from the source material. It is an image that will likely stay with you long after this audio ends.
It's a powerful one.
Yeah. Ortayli proposes that whatever you have lived, whatever friction you have endured, whatever knowledge you have chased, is eventually reflected physically on your face.
Yeah.
A life of monotony, of staying safely within your comfort zone, of avoiding the brutal travel and the difficult texts, leaves a face entirely expressionless. It is a blank page.
Right.
But a life of curiosity, of exhaustion in foreign streets, of intense study and profound, mature love, well, that leaves a face that can be read like a rich, fascinating book. The struggles, the joys, the accumulated experiential capital, it all leaves an indelible physical mark.
Your face becomes the map of your intellectual journey.
Exactly. So I'm going to ask you directly right now, if someone were to look at your face today, what kind of story is written there? Is it a blank page of comfort? Or is it the complex map of a traveler? And more importantly, what chapter are you going to force yourself to write tomorrow?